Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. This is Muhammad Ali from CML InfoTech. Today, day 13, part 1 from CCNA. We're going to discuss about DHCP, DHCP relay agent, and SSH. We're going to recap on the last session. We have discussed about the DHCP, which is UDP based, port number 67 and 68. This protocol going to be used to configure the DHCP to assign to get the IP to the client. So this DHCP server can be configured on many devices, such as, like, for example, router. We can configure it in switch. We can configure it in servers. We can configure it in appliance, such as, let's say, telephone server, Wi-Fi controller, or any relevant product that we can configure, or even we can configure in TFTP server for testing purpose. What I meant, when you do troubleshooting at the customer premises, for you to check whether the DHCP can be viable or releasable, or even you don't have a clear idea about what IP to the box which delivered by the vendor. So you just wanted to have those in the internet, in the network. So you can run your TFTP server within your client system, because in the client system, when you cannot configure DHCP server because it's one of the server services. So you can use one TFTP server as well. I'll show you later on. So we do have here, I'm demonstrating the current design. You have one switch and connecting, let's say, 3 systems in port number 1, port number 2, and port number 3. Okay. Also, you have 3 more systems. So here, four, five, six. Yeah. So the port number is 4, 5, 6. Let's say these systems coming under VLAN 10, and this is VLAN 20. And before we do configuration, we should have the proper design schema, that what elements that we are going to be assigned to the systems. Example, in terms of an IP address, I'm going to use 192.168.10.1, 10.2, or any series of any continuity IP within 10 network. Okay, so I would say that 10.24, and this could be 192.168.20.0. Even we can do demonstrate with by using subnetting IPs. When you configure the network, you should have the one of the elements is IP schema, which the network, and you should know what's your gateway which you're planning to give, either the first IP or the last IP. And this IP address, either you can give by manually or by automatically. Think that you don't have only systems, you have Wi-Fi, access points, telephones, BMS, ACS, many other services within your entity. So one of the best key plan to assign an IP to edge devices that's to go through DHCP. So in order to define a DHCP, you should have a device who can understand the DHCP services, the switch can be supported. So you can configure the DHCP in the switch. Okay, so when you would like to configure the DHCP on the switch, you should have the minimum information. That is nothing but, if you look into this design, you should have the pool name. So This is, you can define with any, but generally this name would be connected with your VLAN. Also, you should know that this VLAN pool, this DHCP pool is used for which VLAN. So I have given for server VLAN ID underscore other VLAN name. Yeah. And the next command is network, and you need to define which network and what is the subnet mask of that network within that pool. The default router is nothing but what IP that you prefer to give as a gateway to those clients. So 10.254. So generally, the designer can be designed 10.1 or the first IP or the last IP. And mostly every organization should have the DNS server IP, which is their own IP address. If you don't know, or if you're not having it, or as a temporary, in order to make the network to be up, you can give a global DNS IP, which is 8.8.8.8. Then the domain name. Domain name, mostly the company should have one domain name, which is their entity names, so that you can also define. Few more parameters also that you can define. Like example, if you have a telephone, so you can put the option 150 with telephone server. We will come across later when telephone connected to be in the network. Then you also have to reserve an IP address. This is just because in every organization they must be having many servers or many other devices who needs a static IP address. Like example, I would say VM services, virtual machine services, or any appliances, or individual servers like a call manager, or let's say WLC, wireless LAN controller, or any other product might need a static IP. So you need to define by manually. So I prefer to define starting 10 IP to be reserved. If not, if you're not going to use now, maybe it could be received or required on a later. Once your network has been implemented and started live, it's not that easy to make any modification within your network. So better to be thinking a future concept how much that you need to be reserved. And you can see that the statement says that until here is the command, then it says that start IP and the end IP. And on the second statement, your start IP and your end IP are same, which means you cannot omit your statement. So if you have a single IP, you should give the same as start and end. Okay. And same way, I do also have a subnet for VLAN 20, which is IT20, another 3 more system starting from port number 4, 5, 6. And also I have excluded IP address. Okay. So let me configure this. Now, if you look into the design, you can see the 10 systems, the 3 systems within one VLAN and the first switch are defined. And if you click the system, you can see the IP address starting from 169.254. 169.254 is the class B IP address, which will be taking as APIPA if DHCP server is failed to release the IP. So when a client is requesting an IP, so one of the DHCP server within their entity should release the IP address. Either of the reason, if the DHCP is not able to release the IP address, and even there is no static IP is being defined, so a system by itself will release an IP which is called APIPA, automatic private IP address. So even I could try with the static, and again I'm going to give a DHCP. So they again trying to get the requesting IP address, but again failed because we don't have a DHCP. Either of the reason, we don't know whether the DHCP server is configured, but for some reason reachability issue, we'll look into this. Okay, so let me go back to the design, and we're gonna take the first switch. So this switch, which I referred as a DHCP server, enable, as what I've mentioned. So if you look into show run section, you have command called, you can define the exact word, like for example, DHCP. Even DHCP service is disabled, which is called no service DHCP. And there is no statement which defines to the DHCP configuration. So let's redo the configuration config C. Yeah. What we have done now, we have configured the DHCP server here. We'll take the configuration for VLAN 20. Copy. Yes. Service DHCP. Service DHCP that we configured to take the IP address in the switch. Okay, now show IP DHCP binding is the command. Here you can see that many of the devices has taken the IP address 12, 13, 14, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You can see the detail, the show IP DHCP pool is the other command. Here you can see that list the IP address. Somehow 5 IP addresses has been list 4 address, show IP DHCP binding. If you have can see the conflict command, yeah, the one IP address has been conflicted. So clear IP DHCP conflict star. We go back to check the configuration, the design. Here you can see the system has taken IP automatically via DHCP. The system has taken IP from the DHCP. So let me compact command prompt to see the IP address. You can see here the system has taken IP from the DHCP server, and here you can see the gateway IP address and the DNS name. Okay, so let me try to ping 192.168.10.11.254 is the gateway. So now in this design, we have a DHCP configured in the switch, and switch is able to release the IP address to all other system within that switch. And even you have trunking connected to switch 2, and switch 2 have systems. And this systems, when trying an IP address, it will send that broadcast, and this will release to the DHCP server, because the gateway for this system is located in this switch, as this switch is considered core switch, and this is considered as access switch. Like this design could be, this is core switch, and you have access switch. Here you have a system, here you have a system, and DHCP located here. So if you have n number of access switch and systems underneath of those till the gateway or the routing functionality would be applied in the core switch. Okay, so in reality, the design would be you will have two core switch stacked each other, and they will be acting as a control plane, and they are configured like here the port numbers by physically, let's say GI Giga Ethernet 01, and this port is physically GI 01 01 or GI 1/0/1 or GI 1/0/1, and this port is by physically GI 1/0/1. When we made them as a stacking, this port remain the same, and this port will be going to 2. So this will be acting as a single switch. And when you have an access switch, the access switch uplink port, one connected to here and one connected to here, and they will be a group called LAC. So any of the switch comes underneath of your core switch, acting as an access switch for those edge devices who connected to those edge switches will be having a gateway in the core switch. So they can be easily release the DHCP within or until they reach to the core switch. So making a network in an easy deployment, you have DHCP in the switch, and whoever is connected to them will be releasing the IP address from the DHCP server directly. So your DHCP server can be your switch, can be your router, can be your server, or can be your Wi-Fi router or Wi-Fi controller, or any relevant device who can produce the services in terms of the DHCP. Now, coming back to the design, or if you could check in many of the entity, even you have the DHCP server as a MS Microsoft system. So let me consider that you have a switch here, okay, and you have a port number, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me put the port number 7 here. So here you can see you have a 3 system. It's supposed to be in VLAN 10 with the network is 192.168.10.0.24, and this is in this is in 192.168.20. The same old design. What make difference here that, so let's say you have one server here which is connected to port number 7, which is my DHCP 7. Let's say my DHCP server is by statically defined 192.168.10.10.1.24. Okay, and I'm removing DHCP from switch and replacing into a dedicated DHCP server. Okay, let's see how the design will be. So here we have interface VLAN 10, and here we have interface VLAN 20 within the switch, which is the gateway called 20.254 and 10.254 in the switch. Okay, so my first task to remove the DHCP server from the switch. Let's say I'm going to give clear let's say clear IP DHCP binding template. Okay. So here I have the configuration which supposed to remove. Let's say no command would be a removable command in front of the any commands in Cisco. So I'm going to remove the excluded address as well as the DHCP from the switch. Config. No service DHCP. Do right. Show IP DHCP fine. Or show run section DHCP. No DHCP. Now going back to the design. Remove the in reality you don't need to do this command just for removing. You can directly set up a command in the DOS of any system who needs an IP address, which means IP config slash release and IP config slash rename in the system. So the system itself will release the IP and will get the new IP automatically if the DHCP server is reachable. Let me connect it to my DHCP server. First, I need to configure port number 7, which I'm going to connect it to the server. So here, let's say straight cable. Let me take the cable, fiber, copper cross, and copper strand. From port number F02 to the switch 7. And show VLAN. You can see the port number 7, VLAN 30, port number 7 and 8. I need to move that to into VLAN 10. So config interface F0/7, switch port access VLAN 10, do right, do show run section F0/7, do show run, do show run, do show VLAN. Here you can see the port number 7 is a part of the VLAN 10. Now, I would like to take the server. This is my server, and I need to assign a static IP to the server. So let's say config server IP address. You can see here the servers and configuration. The display name, you can put server 0. The default gateway, I would like to give 192. .254. Let's say DNS server. Then if you click fast Ethernet 0, you can see here fast Ethernet 0 IP address, which is the interface connected to the switch 192.168.10.5 subnet mask. Okay. Now going back to the desktop, IP configuration, or even you can give IP from here. You can see that IP address and gateway. Okay. Now going back to the services, here you can see that many services, including DHCP. You can see currently it's turned off. We can turn it on. Here in 192.168.10 network, I would say that let's say start from 10.50 until 10.250. Starting from 192.168.10.50 is my gateway. The 10.254 is my gateway. Then here you can see TFTP server, WLC. So from 50, I would say 50 to 100 address. So starting from 50 until 100 address to be available towards to the client. Save. So here 10.50, 10.100, and the default gateway would be 192.168.10.254 DNS server 8.8.8. Now 192.168.10.10 not 10, 20.254 8.8.20 at this is for 20. Let me turn on the DHCP. One 192.168.10.254 8.8. If we have turned on the DHCP also. Let me go back to, so we have two pool 10 and 20. Let me go back to the switch, and here if you look into the PC1 IP config, you can see the IP starts from 10.50. Okay, so which means the system is automatically taken IP from the DHCP server. The IP starts from 10.50. Let me take second system, which is 10.51. Even I'll take a third system, which is, you can see the third system, which is 10.51, 52. The third system would be 53. Let me see the third system. Okay, 50, 51, 52. The three system has taken IP from the DHCP server. Let me go and back to PC4. If you look into the PC4, which is comes under VLAN 20, and if you look into the IP configuration, you can see 169. So IP is not released from the DHCP. Let me try again. IP is not released from the DHCP server. So this is one of the area to be discussed. Only VLAN, only the systems or the edge devices which belongs to VLAN 10 has taken IP automatically. Whoever other than VLAN 10, even VLAN 20, 30, or any other services from different VLAN, they are unable to release the IP from the DHCP server. This is one of the area to be covered now. So this is we also called as DHCP relay agent. So if we have clearly configured DHCP relay agent, then this systems can be released the IP from the DHCP server, which we can discuss in part 2 after the short break. So hope you have understood how to configure the DHCP server in switch and in server. So thank you for joining with us. We'll see you on today in part 2 from day 3, day 13, part 2. Thank you. Have a good day.